Again, welcome. My name's Michelle Capano. I'm chair of the Housing Committee, and I'm welcoming you to tonight's event. We're excited because we want to, come to you again as we did previously in March. So today we're going to be talking about our goals and strategies. We have an activity planned for later. We're here supported by the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and they're going to take us through a presentation. And then afterwards, we'll break from that presentation. We're going to go through some stations to talk about some of the goals and strategies. And certainly we really would appreciate your feedback, your questions. Challenge us. Let us know what you think, whether, what we have come up with makes sense for our community. And then we'll come back for a public comment, and then we'll adjourn. So, and just to remind folks, because we do have the members of the committee, we do treat this and support the open meeting law, so we will be doing a formal opening. It is at 7:25 p.m., and then we will definitely adjourn the meeting. But before I pass it over to MAPC, I just want to introduce the members of the committee. Michael Raworth from the Zoning Board, Lynn Spencer from the Community Preservation, Patrick O'Reilly from the Planning Board, Patty Karras from the School Committee. Jim Walsh is an appointment from the Town Administrator, like myself. Absent tonight is Mark Cullinan with a prior commitment, and David Wilson from Nahant Housing. But we're excited to be here with all of you. We look to talk to most of you later on during the event. So right now I'm going to pass it over to John Cruz and Alex Kopelman from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
Thanks, Michelle. I think Tony actually wanted to make a statement, right?
Thank you. Welcome to the town hall. Thank you for coming to this meeting. This process is very, very important to our town. And as you can tell, as Michelle mentioned, we have a lot of different perspectives from different committees joined onto this subcommittee to deal with this issue. We have, we have requirements on the town from the state. And the town has needs as well. And what this committee is really trying to do is get input from the town on how to meet those requirements, how to accomplish the town's needs without doing it in a scary way. This means change, and change is a scary word. But it doesn't have to be. The needs of the town are not scary. They are, it's elderly housing, it's affordable housing, it's veteran housing, it's, you've probably heard the stats from MAPC or the committee in the past. One of the ones that sticks out the most for me is 40% of our population in Nahant would actually qualify for affordable housing. And that's an eye-opening stat. So, embrace the conversation. We really are trying to find, it's complicated, the different requirements that are on us from the state, but there is an avenue for us to accomplish those requirements and satisfy our needs as a town without drastically changing our community. And that's why you guys are here. That's why we're going through this process. We're not building 100 units tomorrow or anything like that. This part of the process is to develop a plan and identify, where we could accomplish those needs and those requirements without drastically changing our community or throwing something new at the community without going through this public process. So I'm happy that a lot of you guys are here, and I'm very proud of the committee and MAPC. We were able to get a grant through the Community Preservation Committee 2 town meetings ago, which is paying for the technical services that we got from MAPC for the affordability side of things. And then the state passed a law on all MBTA communities, which we are one, that requires certain amount of multifamily zoning in any MBTA town. we were able to get a grant from the state to pay for MAPC for that portion of it. So it's, it's not them being here, luckily isn't, we've hired them in a cost-efficient way. And that's what we're trying to do. So thank you for coming, and I'll pass it back to Alex.
All right, thanks, Michelle and Tony. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. My name's Alex Koppelman. I'm a regional housing planner with MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. For those who are unaware, we're essentially an agency that serves the greater Boston area. We provide technical assistance to help with planning efforts in housing, economic development, transportation, all sorts of things. And as Tony said, we're basically here to help. We're helping with the technical work to facilitate engagement events like this as well. Just to be clear, we didn't make these state requirements. We're just here to help the town work towards something that makes sense for Nahant. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight, and I'm really looking forward to hear from you, because this planning process is really a public-driven process, and that's what we're here tonight to do, is to hear from you. So getting into it, this is the agenda. I believe you've seen that. We're going to start with a presentation, and then we're going to get into some activities at the different stations here, where we're going to go into kind of small group discussions about some of the recommendations that have been proposed in the plan. This is an effort that started last fall. We've been doing a lot of data analysis, a lot of analysis of constraints to growing the housing stock in Nahant, mapping work, and based on this analysis and what we heard at the first public forum, which was in March, the committee has put forward some goals for the plan. Tonight, we're going to talk about some recommendations that would help move those goals forward. So this is a process that, as Michelle and Tony have mentioned, is driven by a committee of Nahant members who have different insights and representations in different areas of the town. It's a data-driven process. We bring the data to the committee. They guide the decisions that are made. But this is also a public process. So again, we're here to hear from you tonight about some of the draft recommendations that have been proposed so far. Ultimately, the housing plan will have to be voted on and by the Nahant Select Board and Planning Board. If they vote to adopt it, then have to be approved by the state, as there's some state requirements for a plan like this. As a part of this effort, we are also helping the town meet this new state requirement called MBTA communities, or we might refer to it as 3A, Chapter 3A. Basically, what it means is that communities that have some level of service of public transit have to have a zoning district that essentially creates a smooth, easier process for creating multifamily housing. To be clear, the town doesn't have to build any housing. Any housing is completely up to any property owner. We're just purely talking about zoning and regulations that would allow a property owner to make a different decision than what they can make right now. Requirements for zoning vary by type of community. Nahant is classified as adjacent small town because it just has bus access, and the population size, as you know, is much smaller than other communities. So the requirements that Nahant has to meet in its zoning are much lower than other communities, but we'll talk about those details in a moment. As you can see, we're still a ways off with 3A, as it does not need to be put in place until town meeting December 31st, 2025. That's the deadline that came from the state. So tonight, we're here to gather your input on some draft recommendations and strategies that we've proposed in the plan that the committee has endorsed, and some areas of town where it makes sense to use the town's tools to encourage getting new kinds of housing in Nahant, having a greater variety of housing, as well as having housing that folks here can afford. And we're also going to look at potential areas where it would make sense to have 3A zoning, but again, a lot of the 3A work will still be to come. All right, I know that was kind of a mouthful, so we're gonna get started with a little bit of a fun activity. We passed out a sheet that was housing trivia that had some questions about housing in Nahant. If you didn't know the answers to these, that's okay. We're going to go through it now. But the first question asked what the median price of a single family in Nahant is. It's $950,000. I will note that this has basically doubled since before the pandemic. So we've seen a huge increase here as well as in all the communities across greater Boston. So if you think about that and you're trying to buy the median price single family home here, you need to have a lot of resources and savings because a 20% down payment, which you need to do 20% to avoid private mortgage insurance costs, that's $190,000. So if you're a senior, maybe looking to downsize into something smaller, maybe you grew up in Nahant, you want to buy your first home here, it's really difficult because of the high cost of single-family homes. And single-family homes make up 75% of the town's housing stock. So we're really trying to introduce different types of housing that can create different price points and options for people that have different housing needs and goals. The second question asks, what is considered affordable? This is a question I get a lot in the housing world because it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But essentially, simply put, it means that the home costs no more than 30% of your income. And the reason for that is you have other expenses like food, healthcare, transportation, and so you don't want your housing expenses to be eating up so much of your income. You want that to be at about 30%. If you're paying more than 30% for your housing, it's considered cost burden, and a lot of folks are paying more than half of their income on housing, which would be considered severely cost burden. So the next question is a little bit of a distinguishment between different types of affordable housing. So what we refer to as lowercase a affordable housing is housing that's in the market, it's just market rate housing, but it costs no more than 30% of your income. Like maybe it's a condo instead of a single family home, so it's a little more affordable. And then there's uppercase A affordable housing, which is required to cost no more than 30% of your income. It's built by developers or it could be required from developers by zoning. There's many ways that we can do that, and we'll look at some strategies for that tonight. So the answer is all of the above. The fourth question asks what the area median income is for Greater Boston. This is important because it's what they base eligibility for uppercase A affordable housing on. So the answer to this is $140,200. So that is the area median income for households in Nahant and Greater Boston, the whole metro area. What's the local median income for households in just Nahant? That's $94,000. And I think it's interesting because when you look at other seaside communities that have similar characteristics to Nahant, you can see that there's a bit of a difference here. And one of the things that I also think is interesting is that the median income of owners, which is in the orange bar, and the median income of renters, which is in the blue bar, is pretty similar, $95,000 and $79,000. And if you look at other communities, it's much more typical that owners would have a much higher median income. So I think that's something that's interesting about the median income in Nahant. Okay, so households that earn 80% of the area median income, what we talked about earlier, they're eligible for affordable housing. So how many households in Nahant do you think are eligible for affordable housing? There's 645 households in Nahant that would qualify for affordable housing. So it could be single-person households, three-person households, four-person households, but this is roughly how many are qualifying for affordable housing in town. How many affordable housing units does Nahant have for those 645 eligible households? Only 48. So you can see there's a big need for affordable housing here, as well as in all those other communities I showed you earlier. This is just a very expensive region to live in. The state, through Chapter 40B, requires every community to have at least 10% of its housing stock as affordable housing. What percent of Nahant's housing stock is affordable? Just 3%. A new state law, which is MBTA Community Section 3A, which we talked about earlier and we'll talk about more later in the presentation, asks, based on this big need for housing that's affordable, both lowercase a and uppercase a, it asks every community to create a zoning district that's going to make it basically a little bit smoother of a process to permit multifamily housing so that there are different types of housing options in town. When the state originally released this law and the guidelines, every community had to zone to allow a developer to build up to 750 units or more. But it has since been adjusted based on population size and different characteristics so that the threshold has changed, and Nahant's requirement is 84 units. Again, that's not going to happen in a day. It's not something the town's going to have to do. It's just zoning that could be in a couple different areas of town, spread it out, because we don't want to have some big massive development in a little nice community like Nahant. But it's basically zoning that would allow property owners to make the choice if they would like to build multifamily housing. Currently, the zoning regulations really only allow for single-family homes. But tonight, we're going to look at some different strategies. We're going to look at some different locations where we could consider doing this. But again, this is a state requirement, but we want to work through it together and find a solution that's right for Nahant. All right. So the next part of the presentation here is a review of goals that have been established for the housing plan. Based on the data that we reviewed and kind of went through it a little bit now, and you have a sheet that summarizes it, that was really the focus of the first forum. And then we heard from all of you. And based on that, we took that information to the committee and we established 4 goals for the plan. First is to introduce little to middle housing options. So smaller types of homes like maybe cottages, townhouses, small mixed use housing, lots of different things, but basically some other options than just single family homes so that we can get some different price points, maybe create some downsizing options for seniors, some first time home buying options for young people. But basically the more options you have, the better you can serve different needs, and the more likely you're going to have housing that happens to be affordable in the marketplace. But knowing this is such an expensive area, we also need to be working on uppercase A affordable housing that's going to be required to be affordable. And there are many ways to encourage that to happen that we're going to discuss tonight. The third is to look at programs and other tools to reduce housing costs for seniors that may be struggling to afford their housing, as well as other households that may be struggling, maybe those who live alone, blue-collar workers, teachers, firefighters, police officers. I mean, a lot of folks are making incomes that just aren't stacking up to the increasingly high cost of housing. And then the fourth is to basically find a balance between meeting the town's housing needs and really protecting the beautiful nature of Nahant, the open space, all of that. So to really harmonize housing needs with sustainability goals. Tonight, we're going to be looking at recommendations that work towards advancing these goals. These have been drafted, they're not final. We're presenting them to you tonight for your input. From that, we'll probably eliminate some of them, but we want to understand what's the priority. So we're going to later break out into stations. You're going to indicate which ones you think are most important, which ones you support the most. And based on that, the committee will refine these strategies into something that can be focused on in the next 5 years. Keep in mind, any strategy, even if it's in the final plan, it's going to require more action, more public discourse to actually be implemented. So this is not the end-all be-all. Like, for instance, if you had a zoning recommendation, that's going to require additional action. It's going to have to be passed a town meeting. So we're just thinking at a high level about what makes sense, what's the roadmap to meeting housing needs in Nahant. So you're going to see at the stations some strategies to build capacity and programming for housing needs, some recommendations around regulations that deal with zoning, and some recommendations that deal with policies. I'm not going to get into all of them right now because you're going to get an overview of them at your station, and that's when you'll be able to ask questions and give your input on them. But That is everything for that portion. I am going to just pause for a moment to let people digest and to see if there's any questions. We have time for maybe one or two questions. Sure.
Yet your presentation says 10%. Can you tell me why there's a difference there? And then I have another question for you.
You might be looking at the 40B requirement. There's two state requirements. One's through 40B, where 10% of the housing stock has to be affordable. The other is 3A, where they're asking you to zone for a certain number of multifamily units that would be allowed through zoning.
The other question that I have is there a law, because I couldn't find it anywhere, that says that it has to be developed by a developer? Could a town, as other towns have done across the United States, decide to pass a zoning law that makes it easier for homeowners to go ahead and get zoned for in-law apartments, cottages, adjacent buildings? Because if you concentrate it all in one area, you will, and I've seen it happen in other communities that I've lived in, reduce the property values of the homes around it. You may be able to meet all of these requirements or a general portion of these requirements by making it easier for homeowners today to go in and get an in-law apartment. I, for example, one of them. My father lives with me in Guest Street. I could easily turn that into in-law apartment if I didn't have all these restrictions around it.
Yep.
And absolutely qualify for affordable.
Yep.
So is there a law that requires it to be developed by a developer, or is it up to the town?
Mr. Coughlin, could you repeat what your question was?
Yeah, the question was about whether there's a law to develop, I think what you're referring to is accessory dwelling units, or some people call them in-law apartments. And I'm glad you raised that, because it's actually one of our recommendations that we're going to talk about at the station over there, which is to revise some zoning regulations in town that would allow homeowners to, if they want to, build a small cottage in the backyard, maybe addition to the house, or maybe a unit in the attic or basement or somewhere in the house that could be used as a living unit. And it's a great option for facilitating intergenerational living, just like you were saying with your father, I think you said. Yep. So it's a local regulation. And so one of the recommendations we have is to update zoning so that that's possible. And we're going to, weigh in on that tonight. All right, just in the interest of time, I think we need to hand it over to John to talk about the other point of input we're going to gather tonight, which is about locations for where it makes sense to look at encouraging housing development.
Thank you so much, Alex, and thank you to all of you who took the time out of your day. And it's a beautiful day to come hang out with us in our sweltering town hall. I can tell you all right now, the number one lesson I'm taking away from today is the next time I do this, I'm going to be dressing like my friend over here in the Navy hat, because he seems to have it figured out. Go Navy, absolutely. So real quick before I get started, show of hands, how many people were here for the first forum back in March? All these old friends, fantastic, lovely to see you again. For everyone, if this is your first time coming to a housing event, can I see your hands? All the new friends, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. As Michelle said, as Alex said, my name is John Cruz. I'm a senior housing planner with MAPC. I just have a few minutes of your time tonight, but I want to take you through some of the stuff that we've been working on so that everyone has a good understanding of where we're at. And then we're going to talk about what the engagement activities are for this evening. So one of the things that we've been working hard on, and I know some of you guys watch the meetings over Zoom that the committee's been having. And what we've been doing is having a lot of brainstorming sessions, trying to figure out where in the town it could make sense to target some areas for additional housing development, either affordable, multifamily, something else. So we're trying to figure this out. We've put together some ideas, and some of them are specific parcels of land saying we think that this exact site could be good. Some of them are a little bit more general, and it's like this sort of area seems like it could make sense based on what kinds of development is already there. And we're really excited to bring these here to you tonight. Again, this is all draft. Nothing is set in stone. Nothing is finalized yet, and all the input that we get from you guys tonight is really going to help to finalize all of this stuff. So one of the things that you're going to see, and when you get to the engagement stuff, I'm going to be standing at a mapping board. At that mapping board, we're going to have the different development opportunities, and they're going to be outlined with orange. So with the way that we have this, does it show up in there? It does not. So we have this little orange polygon, and any kind of parcel that we have selected as a potential development opportunity is going to be outlined in orange. This is where we think it could make sense for the town to encourage some additional affordable housing development. We might look at it for 3A. We've had some conversations around that. And these sites could be publicly owned or privately owned. And what we are not doing is sending any kind of mandate to a property owner saying this is something that you have to do. What we're doing is saying, if you own this property and we put it in one of these areas, it's going to give you a lot more options for what you can do with your own property. And that's a big part of what we're here to do, is to figure out where we can loosen some of these regulations to be able to allow people to be able to do more, get more value for their property, be able to provide additional housing opportunities and things like that. So that's the lens through which we're viewing all of this. In addition to the areas in orange, you're also going to see some areas that have this sort of purple outline around them. And these are areas of town that could be potentially modified regulation-wise to support other multifamily stuff. So not a single site, but it could be a collection of parcels, it could be a block, it could be an intersection, just something that we're taking a look at, and we really want to get your feedback on how that's, if that makes sense, if you like what we're saying here. And this could also overlap with some development opportunity sites, because what you're going to find is some places are well suited for development for a number of reasons, and we have some options with them. Other places we won't be able to touch at all, and I'm going to talk about that right now. So in addition to all the places that we figured out where it could potentially make sense, and if there's other ones that we haven't figured out, let us know. We'll be happy to have that conversation. We're also working with a lot of development constraints around here. There's a lot of constraints. And what we have is a really beautiful town. We know we only got about 1 square mile in size, but we also have a lot of other concerns. We have to worry about open space that has some kind of legal protection on it that says legally it cannot be developed. We have to worry about sea level rise and making sure that we're not going to be focusing on areas that are going to be underwater in 100 years. We got to worry about where there's protected species and where their habitats are to make sure that we're not suggesting we go build apartment buildings where some rare bird lives. We got to worry about the way the land slopes. It's mountains, right? Mountains have weird topography, and that doesn't necessarily mean we can't build here. I'm sure a lot of folks in here have houses kind of built into a side of a mountain, but it means that we got to be a little bit more tactful about what gets built there and how. So think a little bit about what this could potentially mean for what our options are. And then a lot of other stuff that we particularly think about in terms of traditional development constraints, things like wetlands, flood zones, areas that are potentially going to be impacted by high storm tides when storms come in, things like that. Additionally, stuff that we don't have maps for, and we always get questions about this stuff, we are looking at things like school capacity. We've been having conversations with the folks at the town DPW to figure out what the water supply in and out looks like. Roads, transportation, all of it. These are all things that we're thinking about, trying to really come at this from a holistic perspective to be able to say, what are all the concerns that the town could have? How do we understand what they are? And how do we take all of this and make a housing plan that is respectful of all of these things that we have going on here? Because we want to be respectful of all of it. We're not here to impose our will on you guys. We are here to have a conversation. We bring the data, you tell us what you think of it, and we try to move together. That's the idea. So to give you all an example, and there's going to be digital versions of these over at the mapping station. We got some tablets. They have a series of maps that cover all of these different constraints that you can take a look at if you want to see them. This is one that I'm going to share with you guys right now. This is the permanently protected open space in Nahant. You can see it includes the golf course and some stuff out on the east end of the town and a handful of other areas. These are all places that we absolutely cannot develop. These have permanent protection. Either there's a deed restriction or a state law or a local law or something else that says this is just simply not going to happen for whatever reason. And we're not here to debate what that is. We're saying that all of this stuff is off the table, and this is one of the reasons why. With that in mind, we also wanted to make sure that that context was important. And I'm going to show you guys a slide. Don't freak out. We'll have a chance to talk about it at a station. This is the board that we're going to have up for the potential development areas, for the opportunity areas, and for the sites. It's kind of hard to see where the lines are because it's a screen. On the poster, it'll look much nicer. And what we did was we have everything outlined there that the committee has selected, that we've had conversations about. And we went ahead and put the protected open space on here because we know for sure that is a constraint that we cannot work around. So we just got to make sure that we ignore it. So when you're interacting with this, make sure that you're not putting any dots over the green areas. But this is just to give you an idea as far as how this is going to look. Yeah, these are outlines, so you can, yeah, it's a little hard to see on the screen, and my cursor isn't working because I got my little presenter view thing up here. But some of the parcels are outlined in orange, and then there's some circles that are in purple that go around some of the bigger areas. So that's what we're taking a look at for all of this stuff for tonight. As we move into our breakout activities, we have a tandem online experience going on with what we have here. So for all the folks that are watching from home, and for everybody who you are all going to go and talk to when you leave out of here and say you had such a wonderful time at this housing forum and you want to get all the input of your friends. So what I'm doing is encouraging every single person in here to go back home tonight, find 5 of your friends and neighbors, and I'm challenging you to get 5 of your friends and neighbors to go here and fill this out and participate in our online open house. It's all the same activities that we have going on here today. There's virtual versions of all the boards, all the inputs, all the recommendations. And if you have to leave early tonight for whatever reason and can't make it through, this is where you would go to get all that stuff finished. So please encourage everybody, go to mapc.ma/NahantOOH and encourage them to fill this out. Post it on the Facebook groups, post it on Nextdoor, bring it up when you're having coffee or tea or margaritas or whatever the flavor of the day happens to be. And that's my ask and my challenge to everyone here tonight, because we want to make sure that everything that we're doing here is as representative of the town as possible and representative of the town's needs as possible. And the best way that we're going to be able to do that is by making sure that the most people who we can get involved are involved. And we need everybody's help in order to do that. So the QR code is. Yep. The QR code for this should be on the agendas. I think it's different than the check-in QR code, but make sure that you have the URL as well, and we'll make sure that we have some information that we'll send out to everybody about this as well. So you can hear there's a little bit of clatter throughout the room right now as we're getting set up, and this is what we're going to go ahead and do. We have 4 stations, and they all correspond with a number that's on your name tag. Everybody got a name tag that has a number on them. And what we're going to do is we're going to spend 15 minutes at each station. If your name tag has a number 1, you're going to go to station number 1 first. If your name tag has a number 2, you're going to start with number 2. If it's a number 3, you're going to start with number 3. And number 4, over here, the big, beautiful map with me. And what's going to happen is you're going to go over to that station. You're going to listen to a quick presentation from an MAPC staff member. We have Gloria, we have Camille, we have Alex, and we have myself. And then we're going to ask for your input on the recommendations, on the map sites, everything else. And then after 15 minutes, Michelle is going to be our referee and let us know that it's time to switch. And you'll walk with your group right on over to the next station. And that way we hope to get hope to get everybody's input for every single part of the forum that we have here. So we're really excited about this. We're excited to hear from what you guys have to say. So take a look at your name tags. If you can't see it, ask a friend who's sitting next to you to tell you what they are. I know it's hard to look down at your chest. And a friendly reminder, if you wandered in later, if you weren't able to sign in before, please go here, sign in so that we have your contact information. And we're really excited to continue this conversation tonight. Thank you all for coming out. Looking forward to talking with you all.
Hi, everyone. So we're going to wrap up. I'm hoping everyone has had great discussions and conversations and was able to look at all the different boards and talk about the different strategies and the goals and the concepts, opportunities. We wanted to use the time that we had left for any other final public comment or questions from anybody. Was there anything else that you wanted to ask of the committee or our partners at MAPC? We definitely, I'll bring the mic over to you and you can ask your question and we can certainly get answers for you. John, did you have something? No? Okay. Okay. B, did you have something? No? No? Okay. I'm looking around the room. I don't see any questions. I know conversations are wrapping up. Yes.
the R1 zone, that doesn't look like that was taken into consideration at all. So,
The R1 zone was not taken into consideration.
well, as far as like orange spots or circles or anything else, or, you know what I mean? Like there's a 46 area.
Well, at the 40 steps area, we have some open space that's preserved, right? So we're looking, we also, I think, in the opportunities, right, we tried to leverage where there's town-owned land. Outside of, East Point in Lodge Park, there's no other town-owned land in that space. But it doesn't stop anyone that owns private property there to take an opportunity and do something, whether it's subdivide their lot or reconfigure their lot, take a house down, build multifamily by right, depending whatever the zoning is that we pass.
So why was that house?
Hold on one second. The question was consideration for R1 zoning up at East Point, in the East Point area. Go ahead.
So, but also, so I noticed like the Catholic Church is in an orange zone, and there's a house right next door to the Catholic Church that's in that zone as well. That's private property.
So, I don't know, when you're looking at the Catholic Church, the house on the left, that's the rector, that's housing, that's owned by that property is owned by the Catholic Church as well.
So,
No, it's just an opportunity area. It is, it's private property, that's right, but it's an opportunity. I'm sorry, I can't hit the rear. Correct. And if there's suggestions to consider those based on tonight, let us know. We tried to make our best effort, based on the knowledge and experience of the committee to try to come up with what made sense. And tonight is for all of you, right? To come and tell us what you think makes the best sense for the community. Any other comments or feedback? Yes, John.
Just for clarification, the rectory building owned by the church, but if the church tries to sell it, get rid of it, move it, it reverts back to the family that donated it in the first place.
So thanks for that clarification. Sure.
Hi, my name's John Lazar. I'm the Veteran Service Officer for the town. I do not live in Nahant, but before I say anything, I've been involved in developing affordable housing with a lot of nonprofits across the state, New Hampshire and Maine. And we gather all kinds of financing and whatever, build a team up. In that particular regard, we have sometimes and often actually gone to the parishes that have empty convents, rectories, and we talk and we work with them. And they have a housing component of the archdiocese, and we can work things out, hopefully. If it's not being utilized, why not? It's on my list for veterans housing.
Thank you, John. All right, anybody else? Okay, so again, I would like to thank you on behalf of the committee for coming tonight. I think this was really a productive opportunity for everybody. Lots of great information and ideas were exchanged. Please let us know, email us with any other ideas you have, any other comments. Yes, B.
I just realized I didn't get it. I understand that the maps and this thing. I understand that the maps and this presentation will be posted on the nahant.org website, so those of us with limited brain capacity can go over it again.
Yes, so after tonight, we will make sure it's available online at nahant.org. The other thing we wanted to remind folks is our online open house is going to go live. So we hope that, check out the QR code that you all received, take a look at the online open house survey, complete it. If there are other things that you thought about tonight, didn't get to talk about, but you want to use the survey to communicate to us, it's a great opportunity. And please share it with your Nahant network, your friends, your family, because we really want to get as much data and feedback from the Nahant community. One more.
just quickly, what's the next step? So there's 40 people or 50 people here, and it's nice we have opinions, but where do we take this?
So after this, we're going to be working with MAPC to understand and collate all of this wonderful feedback that we got from folks. The committee will meet over the coming weeks with MAPC and kind of digest what we heard from everybody and start formulating what's next in the next phase of the housing plan that we're looking to develop. But then we are moving quickly into 3A. So we have public meetings. They're available. Please attend if you have other questions and you want to hear more or understand more in our next phase as we get into 3A. And then once we compose all of our final results, we'll present them to the Board of Selectmen for their consideration and then try to move forward with the rest of the timeline on the project.
So we didn't really do 3A. In this meeting, we were talking about affordable housing, but that mandate, it didn't percolate.
So we covered some of the ideas in 3A, and we will come back at a later date to do some type of similar event or activity around 3A to get additional feedback, because that is going to require, zoning changes before the town meeting. So we're definitely going to look for more, feedback and community engagement on it. So, okay. Yes, Josh.
Do you expect the plan to be all inclusive of the 40B and the 3A, or will they be separatable? In other words, could we pass one without the other, or are they all so tightly integrated? Or do you expect it to be that way, that it covers both?
I think that the committee needs to meet and make that decision based on all the data and the results that we're hearing from tonight, as well as the first event, and make a determination. Do we want to, organize it in the way that's all, both 40A, 40B and 3A, or do we break out the plan? I think that's to be decided by the committee. Alex, I'm sorry, John, and then Alex. And Blake.
You're doing a great job, I might add. It's a very great program to reach out to the community, get their opinions and bring it in. But there's a few things that just kind of jump out at me when I'm dealing with the majority of veterans in the community, that you announced the committee members on this project. And I was just curious if anyone has done a study on them. Are any of them below 80% of the area median income? Are they on the, what's the other percentage of the AMI? We have the local medium house. How much are their houses worth on the committee? And the other one is the area medium income for the Nahant area. How many are in that category? My point is, and I know some of them, and I'm not sure of everyone, but my hope and suggestion would be to make sure that you cover all the bases in this major decision that the town would be getting into, would be to include other members of the community who may fall in those categories, so that they may have a voice and a say what they would like to have in the community and what their hardships might be. Because most of the people on this committee, I don't think they're near there. And it would be nice to have a more inclusive group of people, including veterans. And we have to apologize. We have 3 or 4 veterans that I know of in the House today. And they all have issues. We have new kids coming out of the service. They did 4, 6 years. They sacrificed and served their community and their country. And they're coming home and they can't live in Nahant unless they live with their parents. And you know how that goes with that. They want to get them out. So they're having great difficulty. They won't last long here in Nahant. One has already moved out. They're getting a job elsewhere, and that's the situation. We also don't just talk about too much of homelessness in Nahant. We don't see too much of that. Well, in fact, I have to do it because that's my job. And over the past 18 months, we've had 2 at-risk homeless folks and at least 1 absolutely homeless, living under the train trestles in Lynn, Beverly, Salem, and he's born, raised, brought up in this town in Nahant. And as a VSO in this town, And I would hope that the community wanted me to reach out and help them. We do have homeless folks, in the town and coming in. So there's a lot of other areas I'd like to see the committee develop and blossom, be more inclusive. And please believe me when I say, there are a lot of veterans in this community. A majority are elderly, by the way, widows, et cetera, and they need housing. And they need, by the way, and I did not see that in any of these plans, housing that's accessible, fully accessible, and you can mobilize within the building, age in place as long as you can, with support services brought in. So that's another accessibility feature that you might want to add to the plan. I'm sorry to take up so much time. No, I don't live here. I live in Bland. I used to live in here, but I'm the Nahant Veteran Service Officer. And I'm explaining and speaking on their behalf about the need for more affordable housing.
Tony, did you have something?
I had my time.
I was gonna try and help answer Josh's question. And in doing so, I'll maybe comment on what John was just saying, is that the members of this committee, their role is to be ambassadors to this process. This process is driven by public engagement. So no matter who's on the committee, every meeting is public. There's always public input and these public meetings. So John, to your point, we want as many veterans or, middle, low income residents to be attending these meetings and participating in the process. And one of the questions Josh asked was about the housing production plan and affordability versus 3A, and would they be combined or separate? The housing production plan is not something that gets approved by town meeting. Elements within the plan would have to go to town meeting to make it to move forward. So 3A, the multifamily zoning, is required to go to town meeting for action. So the reason I make that point is that what we're doing here tonight and what this committee is doing is really setting up a framework for the town to refer to when you want to try to make improvements in housing for whichever category you prefer. You refer to the plan and then go to town meeting. So they are kind of two different elements, but I hope that helped answer your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, John. Anybody else? Okay, so
Also be posted. I'm not asking for the votes, but
the proposed strategies?
the 1, 2, 3, 4. where
Yes.
we have options, that'll be part of the presentation, part of what's available to us to look.
Yes, we will, what the materials tonight, we will make sure are available online at nahant.org. So that's.
Thank you very much.
MAPC, any closing comments?
Thank you all so much for being here and sticking with us.
Okay.
We know what's up, we know what's stuff. We appreciate you all. What's my challenge for you all? Tell 5 friends to fill out the survey, go to the online open house, spread the word, help us make this plan the best that we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then for the committee members, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:10 PM. Do I have a? Patty, do I have a second for my committee members? Jim seconds. I need a roll call vote. So Patty, Jim, the chair is aye. Patrick, Lynn, did I miss anybody? And Michael, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.